The voice note that disappeared, Taehyung accidentally played a private audio clip on live. 3 seconds. One voice. 1,000 questions. Why is Taehyung still holding on to Jungkook's voice? It happened in a blink, a glitch, an accident, or was it? Taehyung had gone live unexpectedly, a casual, spontaneous moment for fans. He was alone, sitting in dim light, hair tousled, hoodie pulled over his head. His tone was soft, his eyes tired. No music, no special guests, no elaborate setting. Just him and the silence, until it wasn't as he reached for his phone to read a comment. Something slipped a tap, a swipe, a sound. Suddenly, the screen filled with motionless pause, and then 3 seconds, not of background noise, not of a ringtone, not of music from his playlist, but a voice, Jungkook's voice, unmistakable, unfiltered, unaccompanied, singing in a cappella, raw and trembling, as if recorded not for a stage, but for someone specific. Someone close. Someone who mattered. And then, Taehyung's eyes widened. His entire posture changed. Sorry, wait. Tap. Live ended. Just like that 0.3 seconds, 0.3 devastating, unplanned, accidental seconds. And the fandom was thrown into a hurricane of speculation, tears, and stunned silence. Because if that voice note really was what fans believe it to be, a private recording of Jungkook singing just for Taehyung, then the real question isn't how it was played, it's why it still exists. Why is it still saved? Why? Hasn't it been deleted? Why is it still close enough to Taehyung's screen that he could accidentally open it on a live stream? And most painfully of all, what does that say about what he hasn't let go of? Fans took to Twitter, TikTok, and every corner of the internet in a frenzy. Clips spread within minutes. Audio experts tried to enhance the sound. Armies with pitch-perfect ears confirmed what most already knew in their hearts. It was Jungkook singing softly, emotionally, privately, not for a demo, not for a producer, but for him. Maybe for comfort, maybe for forgiveness, maybe as a memory of something only they shared. And Taehyung, he panicked. Not the way you panic when a screen glitches, but the way you panic when your guard slips, the way you panic when something sacred leaks out, because to the world, their colleagues TO fans, their icons TO the brand, their marketable TO their agency, their assets. But in those 3 seconds, Taehyung was just a boy holding onto a voice that still means everything, and it's not the first time we've seen the cracks, the voice he hears in hotel rooms, the jacket they shared, the live stream where Jungkook whispered, "Even family forgets," that we were supposed to go together, sigh from an offhand interview. And now, this digital ghost of the bond they once had saved still played, still close enough to hit by accident, or was it? Some fans believe it wasn't an accident at all. He wanted us to know, one post read. That voice note was too short to open on its own. He tapped it. He wanted to remember. Others aren't so sure. He wasn't ready to let us see it. Another fan argued. That wasn't planned. That was heartbreak, caught on camera. Either way, the message is the same. Taehyung still keeps pieces of Jungkook with him, not in posts, not in public, but in his phone and his heart, and the silence between lives. And what could be more intimate than that? Because voice notes aren't like videos. They're not polished. They're not meant for fans. They're moments, unfiltered, vulnerable, raw. And if Taehyung is still listening to Jungkook's voice alone at night, then maybe he's not as moved on as Paris made it look. Maybe the Celine lights, the glamorous shoots, the hugs with Bogum were just distractions. Maybe what really haunts him, what really breaks him, is the sound of a boy he can no longer reach, singing from a time when things still felt whole, and the world wasn't watching. Now, the world saw everything, and yet, the person that clip was meant for still hasn't said a word. Will Jungkook respond? Or has that voice, once offered so freely, become a reminder of what they lost? Because if he still sings for him, and he still listens in secret, then maybe it's not over. Not really. Not if 3 seconds can shake a fandom to its knees. Not if 3 seconds can reopen every wound they never closed. Not if 3 seconds of a voice still has the power to make Taehyung freeze. And in that silence, after the live ended, one truth echoed louder than anything else. He still hears him. He still keeps him close. And maybe, just maybe, he still loves what they used to be. But love especially the kind that grows in hidden places, doesn't disappear when cameras stop rolling, it lingers. Quietly, painfully, and now, with just 3 seconds of accidental sound, the silence that both Taehyung and Jungkook have kept so carefully wrapped around them is shattered. Because voice notes, especially the private kind, aren't just recordings, they're time capsules, fragments of a feeling that words can't hold. And in those 3 seconds, fans didn't just hear a voice. They heard a memory, a moment never meant for them, a song that once had a destination, a name, a listener, and the panic in Taehyung's eyes said it all. He wasn't ready to share that memory. Maybe he never will be. Maybe the voice was sent during one of their many long-distance nights apart, when schedules collided, when airports became battlegrounds of missed flights and unsaid things. Maybe Jungkook sang that note as an apology, or a confession, or a lullaby, something only Taehyung was ever supposed to hear. And now, everyone has, and yet we only got 3 seconds, but those 3 seconds broke something open, not just in Taehyung, but in us, because suddenly every theory, every timeline, every suppressed suspicion came roaring back. Was that voice note recent or old? Was it before the silence or during? Was it something Taehyung listens to when he can't sleep? Was it saved under a folder no one else can access? Was it a goodbye? Or worse, was it never meant to be goodbye? Because if Taehyung still keeps that note, if he still replays it, if it's still right there at the top of his app, just one accidental touch away, then he hasn't moved on. And neither have we. Because this isn't the kind of love story you write songs about. It's the kind you bury. It's the kind you whisper into the screen of your phone when the world isn't looking. It's the kind you never fully delete. Because deleting it would mean admitting that what you had is gone. And Taehyung, he has to let it go. And now fans are asking the question no one wants to answer. Why is Jungkook still singing for him if they aren't speaking anymore? And if they're still speaking, why did Taehyung look like he had just revealed a secret he'd been hiding for years? Because we've seen them lie with smiles. We've seen them post on birthdays and vanish again. We've seen edited captions, avoided eye contact, postponed appearances. But we've never seen Taehyung panic. We've never seen him break alive just because of a sound. Because maybe it wasn't just embarrassment. Maybe it was heartbreak, or guilt, or grief, or all of it, wrapped into that voice note, and the years they've spent trying to protect something they no longer know how to hold. And for the first time, we're left wondering, what if they never meant for this to fall apart? What if it wasn't fame? What if it wasn't contracts? What if it wasn't personal? What if they simply got lost in the space between "I'll call you soon" and "Are you still there?" And now, all that remains is this haunting audio, a soft, lonely voice singing into the dark, Jungkook's voice, still there, still his "Oh, what now?" Will Taehyung pretend it never happened? Will he return to Instagram stories and magazine spreads, hoping the noise will drown out the truth? Or will he finally say something? Will he stop guarding the parts of Jungkook that still live in his phone, his heart, his silence? And will Jungkook answer? Or has he said all he could in that voice note? 3 seconds, that's all it took. T.O. remind the world of what they were. T.O. unravel the illusion that they'd let go. T.O. show that sometimes, even silence sings louder than words. S.O. now we wait for another accidental moment, for another crack in the wall, for another sign that the song between them hasn't ended. Because if that voice is still saved, if that song still plays, then this story isn't over. Not yet. Not if he still listens. Not if he still remembers. Not if his first instinct was to shut the world out. The moment that voice came through. Because maybe, just maybe, Taehyung is still waiting for Jungkook to sing the rest. And what if Jungkook is waiting too? Waiting in his own silence, behind every quiet live stream, every cryptic post, every glance that lingers too long at the wrong moment. Because he knows that voice note wasn't just a song, it was a thread. A thread he sent out into the dark, hoping that Taehyung would hold on to it. Hoping that even if everything else around them changed, the noise, the world, the people, that voice would still lead them back to each other. But for that to happen, they would both have to stop pretending. They would have to stop performing strength and start admitting what every fan already knows. They miss each other, not just the version of each other that smiled for fans, not the business partners, not the idols at matching events, but the real them. The boys who whispered in dorm hallways, who stayed up late composing songs that never saw the light of day, who sent each other voice notes when they were too far to speak, who knew that even in silence, they were never really apart until they were. And now, the fandom isn't just heartbroken, they're mourning. Not because the voice note was leaked, but because of how Taehyung reacted, because behind his panic wasn't fear of fans hearing Jungkook. It was fear that Jungkook would hear him and know that he's still listening, still holding on, still unable to press delete. And maybe that's the real tragedy, that the one voice Taehyung hears when he's alone is the same voice he's now too afraid to face. Because what happens when you realize the person you love is now just a memory you keep on your phone? What happens when the only way to keep them close is to not speak their name at all? That's what hurts. That's what made those 3 seconds feel like a lifetime. Because it wasn't just a recording, it was proof. Proof that Taehyung hasn't moved on. Proof that the love, or whatever it was, still echoes between them. Proof that maybe Jungkook hasn't moved on either. Because why else would he send something so raw? And now the world has heard it. And now the silence between them is louder than ever. So what happens next? Does Jungkook stay silent, letting the voice note stand as a message never meant to be public? Does Taehyung go back to his staged smiles and fashion weeks, pretending that 3 seconds of a voice didn't just undo every wall he's built? Or do they both finally do what they've been too afraid to do? Speak. Not to the world, not in a press release, not through vague lyrics or half-answered questions, but to each other. Because love like this, unspoken, hidden, wrapped in music and silence, and every moment that slipped through their fingers, it doesn't disappear. It just waits. I end the dark, did I end the background? I end the space between two lives that still orbit each other without touching. And sometimes, all it takes to bring it back is a song, a voice, a memory you forgot was still saved. Maybe. When Taehyung ended that live, it wasn't just embarrassment. It was overwhelmed. It was remembrance. It was the sound of a door creaking open that he thought had been locked for good. And maybe now he's standing in front of it, unsure of what to do next. Because if he plays that note again, on purpose this time, what happens? Does the pain return? Or does Jungkook? That's what fans are holding their breath for now. Not for confirmation, not for a reunion selfie, but for something real, a sign that the voice still matters, that the memory is still alive, that maybe the story didn't end in Paris, or in a live streamed, or in a deleted caption. Maybe it begins again in that voice note. And maybe one day soon, Taehyung will press play, not by accident, but because he's